Oh, I've got it. It's okay. Yes, thank you. So everyone, welcome. Welcome, yes, welcome to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna Balaram. Sri Krishna Balaram King. And the lotus feet of Sri Devotee. And the lotus feet of Sri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi, who we have been brought to the lotus feet of by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Yes, very good. So we will begin, devotees, by singing a song, as you see it there, which we call Gauranga Balite Habe. Let's just go through it. The title of the song is Lalasa Mai Prarthana. Does it say that? It does.
This is awesome.
Oh. Well, Lalasamai means like enthusiasm, inspiration, intense desire, like that. And prarthana, which is also there in Hindi, and I think you're all fluent Hindi wallas or wallis, isn't it? You understand the word prarthana? Do you understand? That's good. Prayer. So it's a prayer for inspiration and enthusiasm. You could say it like that. And it is from a collection of prayers or songs. Well, prayers in the forms of songs by Srila Narottam Das Thakur, very great devotee poet, who lived a few, maybe 100 years or something like that, after Lord Chaitanya. And this is the first song. Well, anyway, he did a collection of praise. He did a few collections, actually. But this is from the collection called Prarthana, Prayers. And there's about 30, at least 30, maybe more, 30 or 35 of these songs, which are all in the mood of prayers and really desiring our development as devotees. Songs like, I imagine you're familiar with Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu, Daya Karamore. That's one of the songs in the same collection, or you could say the same book. And there's Sri Rupa Manjari Pada. Are you familiar with that? That's very beautiful, extremely beautiful, and very elevated prayer, sure, to get the shelter of Sri Rupa Manjari. and other songs. Anyway, let us go through, let us sing this one. Well, first of all, let me just tell you what it means. The translation, is there? Okay, so anyway, there you go. Let's just have a look at the translation. Raga bolite hare pulaka sharira, hari hari bolite mayane barinir. When will that opportune moment come to us? When there'll be shivering of the body as soon as we chant Lord Gauranga's name? While chanting Hare Krishna, when will there be tears in the eyes, in our eyes? Ar kabe nitai chantir, karuna hoime, samsara vasana mora, kabe tucha habe. This word kabe, and even habe, but particularly kabe, means when. Well, in Hindi it's sort of kab, right? When. Yeah. So when will I obtain the mercy of Lord Nityananda, Chandra? When by his mercy will the desire for material enjoyment become very insignificant? That's, yeah. You know, you see in the second line, samsara vasana. Samsara means birth and death in this material world. And vasana means like the very fundamental manifestation of those desires and attitudes which keep us in samsara. Like we all know that we have attractions to different material things, generally to the opposite sex, money, comforts, and name and fame and all sorts of things along those lines. But, and the attachment to those things will certainly keep us in the cycle of samsara. But when we say samsara vasana, it means like very foundational forms of these things. Like in every species, there's attraction, particularly to the opposite sex. It just doesn't matter. It's not just humans. It's not just people in Botswana or Gabarone. But, you know, this attraction to the opposite sex is found in all species. Even species which to us look very strange and even, you know, a bit ghastly. But that type of attraction is there. So samsara vasana means that general type of attraction which you find in different species in their own particular ways, but basically it's just their version of a particular type of material attraction. So Prabhupada elsewhere translates this verse that when will I get the mercy of Lord Nityananda? I will get the mercy of Lord Nityananda when my foundational material desires become tucha. Tucha means just insignificant, like they're practically not there. Vishaya chariya kabe shuddha habe mana, kabe hamaherava, Shri Vrindavana. When the mind is completely purified, being free from material anxieties and desires, then I shall be able to understand Vrindavan. And that's sort of basically it, actually. But whoever did this translation tacked on a little bit to understand Vrindavan and the conjugal love of Radha and Krishna. Then my spiritual life will be successful. Rupa Raghunatha Pane Haive Akuti, Kade Hamabu Javase, Yugala Pirati. When will I be very eager to study the books left by the six Goswamis, headed by Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Raghunath Das Goswami? By their instruction, I shall be able to properly understand. To understand what? Yugala Piriti, the loving affairs of Radha and Krishna. Rupa Raghunatha Pade Rahu Mor Ashan, Prarthana Karoe Sada, Naratamadas. So, my only aspiration, Asha, my only desire, is to attain the lotus feet of the six Goswamis headed by Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. Narottam Das constantly prays to attain their lotus feet. Right, so no song. Let's sing it. seminar on devotee relationships. Right, and here we go. Now, so I'll just be speaking. Oh yes, very good, we have the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra there. And devotees, I sincerely hope that you've got your paper and your pen, because this is an educational program. This is not entertainment. We're here to try and help you to learn some extremely important things. Right, okay. So, let's begin by saying that one of the main problems in ISKCON, and not even just in ISKCON, but it's there in ISKCON, not just in relationships, although it's there in relationships also, is that we're prone to act in terms of our feelings and not in terms of what is right, and avoiding what may not be right, may actually be wrong. So here we're going to try and just briefly for the next couple of hours or so, just go through some of these points. And in fact, I will begin with some prayers. Namah Vishnu Krishna Prasad Putale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastuja Deshatarane Vanchikam Tribhis Takripa Sindhuvya Evacha Paditana Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I am going to begin, devotees, by making what is really, you could say, a general point, which is very applicable in Krishna consciousness. But in fact, it's not just restricted, limited to Krishna consciousness, but it's about relationships. That relationships are like bank accounts. Yeah, I'm sure, I imagine everyone here has a bank account, or 2, or 3, or whatever, 10 or something. And so you know what making a deposit, some money, into your bank account is. And you know what making a withdrawal of money from your bank account, what that is. And you know what is the balance of your bank account. I think looking at you all, you must all understand it. Prabhuji behind Sanatan. Have you got a bank account? You don't have one. You're too small. I had got my first bank account when I was about 7 years old. Yeah, okay, anyway. Okay. So every relationship is something that can be compared to a bank account. It's not difficult to see the relationship in those terms. And maybe even some of you have done exercises like this, so you're already pretty clear on the idea. Yeah, so it's very simple to understand. But one point Prabhupada made is that some things are so simple that you may not see them. And in fact, Srila Prabhupada said that Krishna consciousness is so simple that many people just can't see it. Yeah. So there's deposits in our transcendental bank account, relationship bank account. A deposit is, I think it's pretty obvious, isn't it? When you do something nice for the devotee, the other devotee, who you have, so to speak, an account with. So when you treat that devotee nicely, generally speaking, the devotee will feel very good with you, pleased with you. So therefore, that means you have, so to speak, made a deposit into your bank account with that devotee. You get the idea? It's pretty simple. But then, if you do something like the opposite, if you start criticizing a devotee who you have we're talking about who you have a relationship with, then the devotee who may have been thinking that you are nice and we have a good relationship, suddenly that devotee starts feeling negative towards you, and that is like making a withdrawal from your transcendental bank account with that devotee. And if you have a bank account or two, then you deposit, you make withdrawals, and it goes sort of up and down. Yeah, but if you withdraw enough, then your bank account may become empty. You may become sort of bankrupt. And in that sense, if you do negative things towards another devotee who otherwise you had a nice relationship with, but now you criticize, you talk behind their back, maybe you borrow something and you don't give it back, all these different types of things, then you lie, cheat, criticize, blame, you become judgmental, you become unsupportive, you become angry with that devotee. Maybe you break some trust. They trust you with something, but you let them down. So these are all ways of withdrawing from your transcendental bank account with that devotee. And you may reach the point where the devotee has just, doesn't take you seriously at all, and just may not be happy at all with their relationship with you. This is what happens in life. You may go bankrupt. You may just run out of money, and then you're in big trouble financially. But in terms of relationships, you can destroy a relationship which otherwise or previously may have been quite nice. But if you do enough bad things, you can destroy it. And if we have time, we will go through, because this is quite an involved seminar. Normally we do it over, it's like 2 or 3 full days from morning till night. Here we're just touching on it for a couple of hours. But we have one little section which is giving, in a sense, to be a little light-hearted. It's giving you advice how you can destroy a relationship if you want to. But not exactly that. but, enough things that you can do negative things so you can just destroy your relationship with another devotee. And unfortunately, these things happen. So, Now, the thing is, in relationships, there's an old English or some saying in English, it takes two to tango. You've heard that before? Tangoing is a type of Spanish dance, but you can't do it on your own. Many things you can do on your own. You can even play cricket on your own if you really feel you have to. But you can't dance on your own. Not really. So any relationship means at least two people are involved. There may be 3, there may be 10, there may be 50. But at least there has to be 2 for there to be a relationship. And when there are 2, we should know we cannot control the other member of the relationship. Not actually control them so they just do exactly what we want when we want. So the thing is, we are more likely to be able to control ourselves. I mean, let's face it, sometimes we lose control of ourselves too. But at least we should be more likely to be able to control ourselves in a relationship. So therefore, what is the best way to improve a relationship is to work on ourselves, rather than have too many expectations from the other person, because you can't control them. So we should not overestimate the power we have to control or to change someone else. Do you understand? Overestimate. And we should not underestimate the power we have to change ourselves and in that way improve a relationship. So, we may say, sometimes devotees say that, it's just the way I am, I'm just like that, I can't change. But then, if you feel like that about yourself, how likely do you think it is that you may be able to change another person? But actually we can change ourselves. Yes. So the odds are greater that we can change ourselves than they are that we can change someone else in a relationship. So this is a very important foundational type of point, that in order to improve, of course, different things, but in order to improve a relationship, we should first of all see how to change ourselves, improve ourselves. And here it comes. Now, I've done this seminar on numerous occasions, here and there, and we now introduce a story. And it's not a Krishna Leela story, or something, really nice like that. And it's not even a true story. It is a made-up story, a fictitious story. And you may be a bit shocked by it, which is sort of one of the basic ideas of it. Okay, so there was one temple in ISKCON somewhere in the world, and they needed a new Vyasa stand for Srila Prabhupada, it wasn't this temple, because we got one, and actually we've even got two. So, it wasn't this temple, so don't worry. But now in that particular temple, the leader was not very good at fundraising. So he just didn't know how am I going to get the money to get a nice new Vyasa for Srila Prabhupada. So anyway, one day, one member of the congregation came in and said something really, and I mean really, extraordinary. Listen to this. It's good you're all sitting down. If you've got safety belts, fasten them, because I think you'll need them. Okay. So this man, Devotee, from the congregation, came in to the president and said, you know what? My wife is driving me crazy. She must die. You must help me to see that she dies. How are we doing? Are you okay? Yes. So the leader was shocked. He didn't want to get into it like, why do you want to kill her? But he was just shocked. But what he did, he sent a spy, what, 007, that sort of thing. He sent a spy to check things out at that couple's home. And this spy listened through the window and heard the wife complaining that my husband doesn't give me enough money to get nice things, to get myself proper clothes, to get nice food. But then he criticizes, why do I look sort of, sloppy, and why is the prasadam not nice? And he always criticizes me. So it makes me feel bad. So when he comes home, I give him a hard time. Yes. And I drive him crazy, because he drives me crazy. So the spy went back and told the president, and the president understood that the wife was cruel to the husband because the husband was cruel to her. Yeah. So he came up with that sort of ingenious idea, the president. He told that the devotee from the congregation, he came back. And the president said, we had a particular practice in Krishna consciousness. He said, it's actually from the 19th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Did you get me? Yeah, and it's mentioned in the 13th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam that if we make a promise to Krishna and we don't keep it, our wife dies. And this congregation member was just like, oh, really? Okay, that's interesting. That's good. So the president said, why don't you make a vow to Krishna to buy a new Vyasa for Srila Prabhupada, and then don't keep the promise. Because then, if you don't keep it, according to Bhagavad Gita chapter 19, verse 11, your wife dies. There you go. And the man said, great. That sounds really like a good plan. So he went in front of the deities and he said, I vow to you to buy a new Vyasa for Srila Prabhupada. So there he is in front of, anyway, the deities. And Then he said, after a few minutes, he said, well, hang on a minute. Wait a minute. How long will it take for Krishna to know that I'm not going to actually buy the Vyasa? And in other words, that I'm actually breaking the promise. Yes, because I just can't stand to live with this woman. For much longer, I'll just go mad. So then the leader said, why don't you say to Krishna, I will get a Vyasa for Srila Prabhupada, and then immediately after that say, but I will not get a Vyasa actually for Prabhupada. You get the idea? You break your promise immediately, and then your wife will die. So he did that. He made a promise in front of the deities, I will get a new Vyasa for Srila Prabhupada. And 1 minute later he said, well actually, I will not get a new Vyasa for Prabhupada. He broke the promise. And then you know what happened? The wife didn't die. So he came back to the president and said, listen, how long will it take for her to die? And the leader, the president said, about 3 weeks. So in the meantime, she's going to die in a couple of weeks. So in the meantime, just be very nice to her, because she's only going to be around for 3 more weeks. So just be really nice. Why not? What's the problem? So the fellow did. He became very nice to his wife and just treated her extremely nicely. Then he came back in 2 weeks and said, you know, I have a big problem. Now I don't want her to die, because I'm being nice to her. And I don't know what happened, but she's being nice to me. So so what to do? And the president, you know, these temple presidents, I tell you, sure, they're very creative thinkers. So the president had it all figured out, actually. Said, you know, okay, I have another idea. This is actually from the 14th canto. Yeah, it's very deep stuff. He said, if you buy the Vyasa quickly, because she's only got another week left, then she won't die, because you promised it. So if you do it, things will work out, you won't die, and you'll be able to live on happily with her. So he did that. He got a nice Vyasa, and you know how these things work. What it says in the fairy tales, what does it say? They all lived happily ever after. And did I get your attention with that? Yeah. So the thing is, you know, every bad relationship you had, you were there. You were there. And you can't just say that it's the other person's fault. So the thing is, you have to work on yourself. Okay. Now we do interactive things. Let's see here. So now, you know what we're going to do? Just for like, say, 5 or 10 minutes, we are going to do an exercise. Divide into twos. Did you hear what I said? Divide into twos. Don't number. Okay. Alright? Now what we're going to do is, we want you and tell your partner, I think we got a partnership here, and we got a partnership there. You've got to figure this out pretty quickly. And you must tell your partner something which, like a habit you have, which is, when we do this, we get really into it, and we tell the devotees, you tell your partner, what is the most horrible habit you have? But devotees, today we will not be so extreme. You just tell your partner a bad habit you have which you would like to change. So, and then your partner tells you a bad habit they have, which they want to change, but they've been struggling with. So now the two of you have said, what is your bad habit? Now, you give ideas to your partner how to overcome the bad habit. You get the idea? Namaste. Malame. Okay. And because, there's a saying, if you want to know how you're really doing in Krishna consciousness, don't ask yourself. Find another devotee, ideally a devotee who you know and who knows you and can give some insight into you. But here, you sort of know each other, don't you? You'd be surprised. So anyway, try it. And so first partner number one says, well, I have a certain habit, what might it be? I'm sarcastic, for example. If you have such a habit, it's a bad habit. So just be honest and say, sometimes I'm sarcastic. Or sometimes I criticize. These are pretty common bad habits. Anyway, whatever, you can think for a moment what habit you'd like to get some advice on. Tell your partner tells you their bad habit, and then you, partner number one, give some input. It's just some ideas that come to your mind. What your partner number two could possibly do to help overcome or start to overcome the bad habit. Are you with me? Yes. Are you still awake? Are you still alive? Okay. So do you have a partner? You have, yeah. Do you? Anyway, you've got 10 seconds to figure out who's your partner. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. So now, who's partner number one? There's partner number one in this group here, with this devotee here, right?
It's not to be the life partner. It's not supposed to be the life partner.
No. Okay, so you've got 5 minutes, okay? You've got 5 minutes. So start. Go on. Just get into it. And if you get some good advice, write it down. minutes. If you finish, just shout. Put your hands up if you need more time.
Eternity.
Eternity. Are you okay? I mean, if you need, just say you can have a little more time. 1 minute, okay, 8 minutes. Oh. Shri Shri Krishna Bhagavan Shri Shri Govitai Shri Shri Jaya. So you got 1 more minute, okay? 8 minutes more. But if you finished, you can just chant. You sorted it out? Okay, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.5, 2.25, 2.1, 2. So devotees, I hope you found that constructive. And assuming that your partner did come up with an idea how you could improve yourself in terms of whatever your fault was, write it down, make a note. Because Prabhupada said that in Kali Yuga, good memory means write it down. Yeah. Good memory means write it down. And don't worry, we will have more opportunities just this evening to do, sort of related things. Yeah. Okay, so now the next theme, the next thing we're going to get into is the idea of associating with devotees who are on different levels in relation to you. In other words, someone who is more senior, in this case means more senior than you. And even the person who's more senior to you may well be junior to another person. So this is all relative in terms of you, where you're at. Right, so you've got juniors, you've got equals, and you've got seniors, 3 levels. In this case, in relation to you. I mean, there's also in a sort of broader sense, just in the whole community, who's more senior and so on like that. But here, we're talking about in relation to ourselves. And there's an interesting verse. Please write it down, the number. It is Srimad Bhagavatam 4:8:34. 4:8:34. And it is Narada Muni speaking to Dhruva Maharaj. And he says, I'll just read the Sanskrit first. Gunadikam mudam lipsed, anukrosham gunadamat, maitrim samanad anvichen, natapar abhibhuyate, which means every person should act like this. When they meet a person more qualified than themselves, they should be very pleased. When they meet someone less qualified than themselves, they should be compassionate towards that person. And when they meet someone equal to themselves, they should make friendship with that person. And then Narada Muni makes a very amazing statement. This is just, it's got to be one of the really most amazing statements in the whole Bhagavatam. That if you do this, he says, in this way, one is never affected by the threefold miseries of this material world. What do you think of that? That is a huge statement. Because, the miseries of this material world, sure, they're all pervading and ever present, and you've got to watch out for them. Yeah. Well, threefold miseries. Miseries coming from your own body and mind. Miseries coming from others. And miseries coming from, you could say, there are different ways of putting it, but just miseries coming from the world, meaning like it's too hot or it's too cold or something along those lines. So these are 3 types of miseries. Your own personal miseries, miseries coming from somehow or other people intervening in your life, and then miseries just coming from, sometimes it's said from the demigods, because the demigods are controlling the material world, but otherwise just from the material nature in general. Yeah, so Narada Muni says that if you can deal nicely, properly, and effectively and nicely with these 3 levels of persons in relation to you, then, he says, you will never be affected by the miseries of this material world. What do you think of that? So in other words, to learn how to interact with others is just about, if not one of the most foundational, it may be the most foundational, but at least it's one of the most foundational factors and things in our lives that we should learn. And they can be learned. Yeah, you can learn so many things. That's what sadhana bhakti is, sadhana. Sadhana means practice, that you're learning and practicing. Learning what are the right things to do, and then practicing doing the right things. Even though it might be difficult for you, like a very simple one, getting up early in the morning. For many devotees, even after they've been devotees for quite some time, it's not so easy to do. And what to speak of people who are just new to Krishna consciousness. I remember the first day I stayed over at the temple, our temple in central London, and they told me, I moved into the temple on the 7th of January, 1973. So the next morning, the 8th of January, that night, they told me, we get up at 4 o'clock. And I just said, okay. But I didn't understand what that meant. But then they woke me up at 4 o'clock. I was like, what? What's going on here? But I got up. And I could tell you a few stories of what happened, but I made it up. But the point in this regard is that it was something I wasn't used to, so it wasn't easy, although it is a very good thing to do. And in fact, it's a vital thing to do, really, to get up early if you want to become Krishna conscious. Yes, sadhana bhakti. There's people who are junior to you. What does Narada say? Should be compassionate toward them. Try and help them. I remember when I was young, I was 17, I got my first job as a journalist. I was a journalist in New Zealand. And for the first few weeks, I was the tea boy, because I was the newest one. And then someone else joined the staff. They became the tea boy, and I became, one of the journalists. So there's juniors to seniors, then there's amongst equals, and there's from seniors to juniors. You get the idea. There are these three types of relationships. And in this case, we're not talking about people who are just in a general sense more senior or in a general sense more junior. We're talking about in relation to you. Yes, so, maybe when I was here last year, I told you the story. It's just a really pretty amazing story. Do you remember, did I tell you the story about when Prabhupada was present, when they did the deity installation in the Amsterdam temple? I did. Really? Okay, anyway, I'll tell you because it's a good one. So Prabhupada was there. They're installing the deities, Radha, Gopinath, who are now in Radhadesh in Belgium, but they're being installed in Amsterdam, Holland. So, the devotees are trying to get everything ready, and Prabhupada was there, and it was being televised, apparently, live on some national TV channel. But the devotees were making loads of mistakes, and Prabhupada was becoming more and more frustrated or sort of disturbed, unhappy about these silly mistakes. And finally, the temple president came and said, right, we're ready to do the fire sacrifice. And here is the Havan Kund. We're going to do it here. They had built with bricks some place for the fire sacrifice. But there was no fruit or anything around that This is the same story? Okay. Anyway, so Prabhupada said, the President says we're ready. Prabhupada says, but where is the fruit? Where is the fruit? And Temple President thought, fruit. Prabhupada wants fruit. 1 minute, Prabhupada. He raced into the kitchen. Where's the fruit? Prabhupada wants the fruit. When Prabhupada would have fruit, he would generally have like a fruit salad, cut up. So the devotees cut up the fastest fruit salad in ISKCON history. And the temple president came out with this, quite generous big bowl full of fruit salad. Srila Prabhupada, here's the fruit. Of course, it's meant to be whole fruits that they put around, an apple, an orange, etc. So Prabhupada sees the fruit salad and didn't say anything. The devotees say that when Prabhupada was not pleased, he might get angry and chastise. But when Prabhupada was really displeased, he wouldn't say anything. Prabhupada here didn't say anything. Now there was one young hippie boy, because this is like, I think, must have been 1972, and it's hippie time in Europe. This young boy, long, greasy hair, and, not your typical organized devotee, but he was a bit of a devotee, not too much, but he was a bit of a devotee. And he had a bead bag and beads, and Prabhupada's sitting here, and this fellow is standing here, like right next to Prabhupada. He could just touch Prabhupada. And he sees Prabhupada is just like, what on earth? So this young fellow holding onto his beads, he leaned over to Prabhupada and said, Srila Prabhupada, just chant Hare Krishna. And Prabhupada looked at him like, who are you? And Prabhupada picked up his beads and started chanting Hare Krishna. Because you can take gold from a dirty place. And how can it be wrong to chant Hare Krishna? But the principle is, when you're a junior, you certainly don't direct seniors, and you shouldn't really give advice even, unless there's some technical matter or something, which requires certain expertise, like material expertise. But spiritually, we shouldn't try to advise seniors. But rather, there are two things, you should write this down. In terms of how we interact with people, devotees who are senior to us, is, first of all, we should ask questions, we should inquire about Krishna consciousness. And secondly, we should render service to that devotee. And in fact, if you're familiar enough with Bhagavad Gita, you would know Bhagavad Gita chapter 4, verse 34. How many of you know 4:34? I'll give you a hint. Devotee. Okay, and that's what it's saying. Should inquire and render service to the spiritual master, who of course is always in a senior position to you. Right, so that in general, we're speaking quite broadly, in general with devotees who are senior to you, that is basically how you should interact with them. And then, we're keeping it simple here, then with those who are more or less on an equal level to you, now it can be a little complicated who is on an equal level to you and who is really senior, who is junior, because, I was in New York, I think it was 1992, and I met a devotee whose name was, what was it? Bruce Nelson. I forget exactly what the first name was, but his family name was Nelson. And he was a young man who when Prabhupada first arrived in America, before Prabhupada even got 26 Second Avenue, but he assisted Srila Prabhupada. He assisted Srila Prabhupada in different ways, doing his programs.
Bruce, is it Brahmananda?
No. Nelson. No. Robert Nelson. That's right. Robert Nelson. Right, Robert Nelson, here it is. He was helping Prabhupada fairly well before Prabhupada got 26 Second Avenue, which was 66. So it may have been 1965. So I met him in 1992. Yeah. And he's already been a devotee since 1965. So, whatever it is, 27 years or something. And he came up to me and said, you know what? I am the most senior bhakta in ISKCON. Bhakta meaning uninitiated devotee. Yeah, so he actually got initiated not too long after that, maybe 95 or something. But it can be a little difficult figuring out who is junior to us, who's equal. Yeah, but in a general sense, in a broad sense, keeping it simple without, getting into details, trying to psychologically analyze a devotee to find out if his consciousness is more advanced than yours. Just a very simple rule of thumb is whoever has been a devotee longer than you, basically, is senior to you, and whoever has been a devotee sort of plus or minus as long as you is more or less an equal. Yeah, and those who got involved in Krishna consciousness before you, they're your juniors. So these are rules of thumb, but they're pretty useful without getting too much into detail, trying to figure things out in too much detail. So there are different ways then of interacting with these devotees, and it's very important to learn them and in a general sense apply them. Like those who are equal to you. Yeah, those who are senior to you, that shouldn't be too hard to figure out. But those who are equal to you, that means devotees have been devotees plus or minus as long as you, and maybe initiated as long approximately, but even probably better is just in terms of how long they have been devotees as compared to you. But anyway, with those who are more or less equal to you, then the basic idea that Narada Muni presents is that we should make friendship with them. Yeah, like equals. Not that we try to assert ourselves over them, and they shouldn't try to assert themselves over us. But as equals, basically, we should share. Discuss. How is life in Krishna consciousness going? And do, kind of what we just did, actually. Have that sort of personal discussion about our Krishna consciousness and share understandings and give some input. Give some input when you feel it would be suitable. Yes, and so that's one thing. Well, in that regard, when we do this seminar, then what we do is we have the devotees. When it is prasadam time, because we, in such as doing one of these festivals, normally we'd have at least 100 devotees, maybe 130 or something like that. So it's quite a group. But we would tell the devotees, now it's prasadam time, just before they go to take prasadam. So it's prasadam time now. We want you to sit with a devotee you have never sat with before. And you don't really know, or if you know them, you don't really know them very well, like that. And just strike up a conversation. But a Krishna conscious conversation. I don't know what it's like here, but in South Africa, the devotees, they generally, the standard thing when you meet a devotee who you know but you haven't seen for some days or something, standard thing is, how are you? And the answer is, fine. And how are you? And your answer is, fine. It's like a mantra. Prabhupada once was asked by a reporter, how are you? Prabhupada answered, what difference will it make to you how I am? Because it's just small talk. It sort of doesn't really mean anything. And Prabhupada said, if I was just about to die, what difference would it make to you? So anyway, so I was encouraging those devotees not to just get into small talk. How are you? Oh, okay. And how's your family? Oh, they're okay. And what's going on at home? Well, but actually start a discussion. Like, I was just reading this verse in Bhagavad Gita, and Krishna says this, or Prabhupada says that in the purport. And what do you think of that? And you actually start having a Krishna conscious discussion, like a creative discussion in Krishna consciousness, instead of just formalities, like social formalities. I was telling somebody, was it you? Maybe it was you. But in Russia, there's no culture of asking people how they are. They just don't do it. They just don't do it. And I didn't know that when I first started dealing with Russians. So I asked this one Russian, how are you? And he said, well, actually, and he gave me an in-depth description of how he was, because he thought I actually wanted to know how he was. It took like a minute or two. So, we should try to cultivate the practice of having creative, Krishna-conscious discussions with other devotees. Yes. And in this way, of course, in that case that I mentioned, you go and sit down with someone you don't really know, certainly not very well, And you may find they're senior to you, or you may find they're junior to you. Could be either or, could be equal. You just have to see. And if it's someone who's senior, so to try and figure it out very quickly, and then you start asking some questions, inquiring. And if it's someone junior to you, then, in a gentle way, not like, telling them off or anything, but you just start giving some input about how they might possibly develop themselves in Krishna consciousness. So if you learn how to do this, and you practice it regularly, and you really get into it, then as Narada Muni says, in this way, one is never affected by the threefold miseries of this material world. Because most miseries of this material world are things which happen in interpersonal relationships. And for that matter, so many good things in life are things based on our devotee relationships. And if you really cultivate good devotee relationships in these ways, senior, okay, I should do like this. Equal, okay, I do like that. Here's someone junior, okay, I try to encourage them and give support and find out how they're doing and see if they have any problems and give them some advice and so on like that. And I just quoted that one verse, 4:834, but there's a few more actually similar verses. Here is, you can write down the verse number, 3:29:17, Srimad Bhagavatam, 3:29:17. Mahatam Bahuvanena Dinanam Anukampaya Maitriyaha Chaivata Tulyeshu Yamena Niyamena Cha. The pure devotee should execute devotional service by giving the greatest respect to the spiritual master, means one spiritual master, but not just one spiritual master. The spiritual master and the acharyas, means the advanced devotees. He should be compassionate to the poor and make friendship with persons who are his equals. But all his activities should be executed under regulation and with control of the senses. Yes, right. Compassionate to the poor. This is Srimad Bhagavatam. It doesn't mean in the material sense. It's basically meaning to those who are like spiritually poor, not doing well spiritually. That's the main idea. So we should be compassionate to the juniors and those who are struggling. Shri Shri Krishna Balaram Shri Shri Gopita Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi Ki Jai. Yes, okay. So it's more or less repeating the basic ideas from the previous verse we were just looking at. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, another thing I could mention. We sing Guru Vandana, Shri Guru Charana Padma, Kevala Bhakati Sama. I imagine you're all familiar with that. The last verse, Dehamori Padachaya. Or where is it? The friend of the poor. Friend of the poor. Huh? Adama Janara Bandhu. Adama Janara Bandhu. Yeah. Adama. It's actually Adama. Somehow, in some of the translations of some of the songs, they were not done by Prabhupada, and they're a bit, not the best. So this is Adama Janara. Bandhu. We should be the friend of such a person. And it really means a person who is not properly situated. Ultimately it means not properly situated in dharma, although the word is adhama, but it can also be applied as adharma. So it's like religiously poor, poor or just not doing well spiritually. Yeah, just thought I'd mention that point. Right. And there's another one here. Well, this is a really good one. This is Bhagavatam 4:38. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead is speaking to the Prachetas. And I'll just tell you the translation. So the Prachetas, they're a group of brothers, kings of, is it Prachna Bharishat? I think so. Sons of one of the great kings, devotee kings. So my dear sons of the king, I am very much pleased by the friendly relationships among you. All of you are engaged in one occupation, devotional service. I am so pleased with your mutual friendship that I wish you all good fortune. Now you may ask a benediction of me. So in terms of principle, this is the Lord speaking to these particular brothers who they're just really good devotees and they just really get on nicely with each other. So the principle is that if we are just really nicely engaged in devotional service and we just really get on really nicely with the other devotees, in terms of junior, equal and senior, and in general, then the Supreme Personality of Godhead will be extremely pleased with us. That's what he says. I am very much pleased by the friendly relationships among you. Hare Krishna. A friendly little devotee came in. Yeah, right. A friendly little devotee came in. Yeah, right. I am so with your mutual friendship that I wish you all good fortune, and now you may ask a benediction of me. What benediction would you ask for? And you can always say, please take me back to Godhead now. And I mean, actually now. Like in South Africa, maybe you're not aware, there are 3 degrees of nowness. You know that. There's now, which means, in a while, a little later on. Then there's now, which means quite soon. And then there's now, which means now. South Africa. have to learn it. Otherwise, someone will say, oh yeah, I'll do it now. And you think, oh, he's going to do it now. Well, it means he's going to do it after a few days, probably. And you may be wondering, he said he'd do it now. Yes, right. So, like we mentioned pretty much right in the beginning, first 15 minutes or something, in any relationship or in any problem, you were there. You were there. In any relationship, you were there. You cannot say that I was not there if you were there. Of course, if you were there, you were there. So in any relationship, you are there or you were there. And so you have a responsibility. It may be greater, it may be lesser, but you can't say you have no responsibility in the relationship. You do. And the thing is, some relationships go haywire. And you know what I mean. Some relationships really go totally haywire. The worst relationship that went haywire, that in my experience, is actually, I didn't know the person personally, but I knew his aunt. In fact, his aunt is a disciple of mine in Johannesburg. And the young man came in and said, I just killed my wife. What should I do? It's a fact, I'm not joking at all. Yeah. And I told him, maybe you should go to the police station, hand yourself in. And actually I didn't even know what happened. But, so there's a relationship that went haywire. There are degrees of haywireness or something like that. That's about the most extreme degree you can get, I think. And, these things happen if you keep up with the news, particularly in America. Someone kills his family and then kills himself. I think it happens practically every day or at least every week. So relationships go haywire sometimes. And even at best, every relationship has its ups and downs. But the thing is, even if your responsibility is only 1%, it's probably very unlikely to say, only 10% say, but you still got 10% of responsibility in the relationship. And you can't say that you don't have any responsibility at all, and it's all his fault or her fault. But as Vaishnavas, as devotees, we need, as Narada Muni said first of all, then it was actually Kapila in the second verse we read just now. We should really try to work on our relationships as much as we're able. Yes. And really try to make the relationship successful and not be satisfied with them being sort of in an ongoing state of not being successful relationships. Yeah. Okay, so now let's have a look. Oh, we got loads of time. Look at that. Isn't it wonderful? Okay, what now? All right. Let's do something else. Now, here's something you can write down. This is to do, and this is general, and it's Krishna, it really applies in Krishna consciousness. Reasons we blame or criticize others. So here is a list of reasons why we may, I mean, not necessarily that for every single one of them, that for all of the reasons you blame others or criticize them, but I would imagine it's very likely you find at least one or two. So reasons you may blame or criticize. One, to make yourself look better. So to make yourself look better, you may try to make someone else look worse by criticizing them. Yes. And when you see others as competitors, you may try to minimize them by criticizing them. And this is a really good one. You may blame or criticize based on others, based on your dissatisfaction with yourself, who you are, your inability to self-accept, to accept you for what you actually are. Because let's face it, you are what you are currently. That's what you are. And that's not some sort of profound statement. It's about the most simple statement you can make. That you are what you are. And you have to be able to understand and accept. Understand first of all, and then accept what you are. And once you understand and you've accepted that actually I'm basically like this, then you have a chance, or a better chance, or even just a chance, to improve yourself. Because if you're not sort of seeing yourself for what you are, you may have kind of hallucinatory ideas of what you need to do to improve yourself. But it's not really relevant to reality, the reality of what you actually are. Yeah, so you may be dissatisfied with yourself, which is really extremely common. And then you feel threatened when you find other people who are more together and better organized and more skillful, intelligent, or even good-looking, possibly, etc. And you may blame or criticize if you are reluctant to admit that someone else is successful. And therefore you want to make them appear to be less successful than they are. Therefore you criticize them. Prabhupada gives the example. Maybe you've heard of it. Those of you who've been around, you've probably heard this example. Two old school friends meet in the street, like many years, like 30 years after they were together in school. So they meet on the street and they say, "Oh yeah, how are you doing? Do you remember such and such? Oh yeah, what's he doing? Well, he's doing this. And do you remember another one? Oh yeah, sure. What's he doing?" And so Prabhupada's telling them this little story. And one of them says, "Well, what's such and such up to?" And the other one says, "Well, you know, he is a Supreme Court judge now." Means it's a high position. And the other fellow says, "No. Are you serious?" And the one who said it says, "Yeah, I was in the court the other day. I saw him sitting there on the bench." And the first one says, well, I'm sure they're not paying him anything. And Prabhupada told that story. Yeah. So it's like a type of envy. Let's see. So you can become intolerant of others' failures, because everyone, sort of, to put it colloquially, everyone blows it sometimes. Everybody's just, that's life. So you may be intolerant when someone else does something stupid or makes some silly mistake or something. And then you feel you want to put them in their place, sort them out. Like our young man, what's your name? Shaurya. What did you say? You sorted him out. Was that? Well, that was what you said? Put him in his place, yeah. Gotcha. Like that. So, yeah. So then you may be intolerant of somebody else's shortcoming, failure. You may then go around and tell others about how they failed. Here's an interesting little story, which I don't think I told you. Prabhupada taught Bhakti Charu Maharaj how to do what did I tell you? Or you read it?
Okay. I must have read it.
Okay, yeah. Bhakti Charu Maharaj. He came here? Did he?
Oh, for the opening?
Oh, for the opening. Just for the opening.
No, before that.
Oh, right, okay. Anyway, Bhakti Charu Maharaj was Prabhupada's personal servant. Prabhupada taught him how to make a chachari. You understand chachari? It's a particular type of way of cooking a sabji in which you almost burn it, but not actually. But it's starting to stick. And then you kind of take it off the bottom and turn it over. And then again let it almost, not quite burn, definitely not burn, but it starts sticking, like particularly with potatoes. They lend themselves to that. It's called chachari, because you're almost charring it. And it's a famous style. I guess it's not so famous in Punjab. But in Yamuna's cookbook, the big one, she's got a whole section of recipes of chacharis. So anyway, Prabhupada taught Bhakti Charu Maharaj how to do this. And did it with him to show him how to do it. And Prabhupada used a lot of ghee, like really a lot, just really a lot. And a lot of red chilies. And it was hot, and oily, you could say. So Bhakti Charu Maharaj learned how to do it. Then just shortly after that, Prabhupada got quite sick. Some sort of flu, but very heavy flu, very mucusy and very unpleasant. And he asked Bhakti Charu Maharaj, make that chachari for me. So Bhakti Charu Maharaj, he got into making it. And he used, a lot of ghee. Means, like a centimeter of ghee or something like that. And put in maybe just potatoes or quite a few potatoes and maybe some other things. And cooked it. But seeing Prabhupada sick, he didn't put much red chili in. Just like a normal amount. And Prabhupada got this subject and took like a mouthful and got really angry. That is there so little chili here? I showed you how to do it. I showed you. And I explained why there's so much chili, because it's got to sort of counteract all the ghee. Yeah. But now, all this ghee going into my system when I'm sick, it's not good for me. And he got on Bhakti Sri Maharaj's case. And then for the next week, whenever some guests would come and visit Prabhupada, he would tell them, he'd point to Bhakti Sri Maharaj and say, you know what this fellow did? And explain it with Bhakti Sri Maharaj sitting there. But you see, this is Prabhupada. He can do things like that. But we shouldn't think we can do things like that. So we may compensate for our low self-esteem by becoming arrogant and manifesting practically, among other ways, in asserting our superiority. Shri Shri Krishna Balaram Shri Shri Gaurata Shri Shri. So, right, what did I say? Yeah. What? Compensate. For your low self-esteem with arrogance in such ways as, among other possible ways, asserting your superiority through criticism. Yeah. You may even try to relieve hurt feelings, if you get hurt feelings, by criticizing, by blaming. Yes, okay. Anyway, these are some thoughts on the subject. Now, what we'll do, devotees, we will do something related to what we did earlier. And this again, and this is very nice. You may feel it to be a bit awkward initially, but our experiences, devotees really appreciate it. Well, it is called the appreciation exercise. Yeah. And it has to be, not something superficial like, oh, I like the look of your Pierre Cardin dhoti, or your Christian Dior sari. Or, I don't know much about these things. You know what I mean? Not that sort of appreciation. Oh, look, you got such a nice watch. Yeah. Some emotion of coming from you, from your heart, which the other person will feel, and by you saying something appreciative. Yes. And you may be sitting next to someone you don't know at all. I don't know. I mean, here in Botswana, it's a small Vaishnava world, so maybe you do all know each other. But what we want you to do is express your appreciation for your partner in crime, your partner, but sincerely. And if you don't know the person, don't be superficial. But you can just say, you can appreciate, well, it's really nice you took the time to come here and take part in this seminar, and appreciate that. But try to make it deeper than that. Yeah. Otherwise, my notes say, how do you appreciate someone you don't know? Well, you can appreciate that they're interested enough to come, that they're sincere, just you can appreciate the fact that they're devotees. They're trying to be Krishna conscious. But the thing is, it has to be you have to have some feeling, and not just something superficial off the top of your head. This should lead you, maybe I mentioned last night, but it should lead you into developing a habit, a nice habit of appreciating other devotees on an ongoing basis. Because this will be very good for you, extremely good for you. Yeah, so it can be like a sadhana. And now if say we've got Devotee Prabhu, there he is there. And Namkashun Pramod. Hare Krishna Pramod. You're not Gujarati, are you?
No.
Punjabi.
No, I'm Marwadi. I'm from Rajasthan.
Okay. Okay, good. Some variety. I thought everyone was Punjabi. Punjabi warriors. That's every second Punjabi is a Sikh, right? A Sikh warrior. Okay, Hare Krishna. So the thing is that you should, between the two of you, one of you has to be partner A or partner one, express some appreciation, and when, say Devotee in this case, expresses some appreciation for you. It is a common Vaishnava practice. If a devotee comes up to you and says, you sang nicely, or you did something nicely, and you cleaned the floor nicely. It's common devotee practice to say, no, I'm useless. But now in this exercise, don't do that. Just let them say some appreciation and just say, thank you. And just leave it at that. Yes. Nothing else. You're not allowed to say anything else. We don't want it to be tit for tat, trying to outdo each other in expressing appreciation. And once you've expressed appreciation and exchanged, with your partner, if you want, let's just start like that. What we do is we then tell the devotees, okay, you expressed your appreciation for your partner, all right. Now go to someone else. And so everybody starts moving around and expressing appreciation. Let's just start with our partners, okay? Whoever's next to you. And if there's three of you, actually we normally do it in groups of 4. Yeah. So you get the idea. And our experience is that after doing this, the devotees feel very happy. They really feel very good. And who was it? It was you, wasn't it, Devotee? No. Anka.
Me?
Yes.
Vishwanath.
You were saying best that we not, what was it for?
Life partner.
About, what problem we may have. And you said, and I agreed with you, maybe better not to be sitting with your wife. But with this one, it would be good if you were sitting with your wife. Yeah, because, and me as an observer for the last many years, I know that sometimes husband and wife relationships can be, anyway, sort of humdrum and not really so appreciative and close like that. So if you want, is your wife here?
Yes.
Oh, she is. There she is. So you sit down, relax, Betty. You had our permission after, I don't know who's your partner, but someone. You can go and do it with your wife. Yeah, why not? All right, devotees, you get the idea. Hope it's clear enough. So let's start. And if you're in the same pairs, whoever was partner one can start, and then away you go. Okay, hurry on. We want to hear some chatter. Okay, we're finished. 8-minute or can you respect to your wife? Okay. 10, 9, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.5, 2.3, 2.25. Okay. So, just an interesting little statement about friendship, about friends. Just something to think about. Sometimes it is said that friends are like your chosen family. They're like family members, but they're your chosen family. Something to think about. And Vishwanathan, or Vishwanath Prabhu, I want you, before you go to sleep tonight, to do this with your wife, okay? You can do it later, it's all right. Okay, and when you check tomorrow with your wife, whether you did.
It's a regular habit, so.
Oh, it is, or are you going to make it? Okay. Right, now, here I want to read a verse to you. Very famous verse from Nectar of Instruction, verse 4, about relationships. Dadati pratiparinati, guyamakyati prichati, bhukte bojayate jaiva, shadvidham priti lakshanam. I think you've all heard that verse before. Very famous verse and very wonderful verse. So here's the translation. Offering gifts in charity, accepting charitable gifts, revealing one's mind in confidence, inquiring confidentially, accepting prasad and offering prasad are the 6 symptoms of love shared by one devotee and another. Now, I'd like you all to just think. For some of you, it may be difficult to remember. Others of you, you may have done this today, but when was the last time you gave another devotee a Krishna-conscious gift? Just think about it. Did you do it today? Or this week? Or last week? Just think about it. And, if you did it today or say in the last couple of days, good. If you didn't, well, even if you did, but particularly if you didn't give another devotee a gift just in the very recent past, I want you all, every one of you, to give one devotee minimum a gift, a Krishna-conscious gift. How's that? Tomorrow. Yeah. And if you're here for the Sunday program, I will check. I will ask. At least some of you. But I you are then given a gift, then I want you to respond nicely, appropriately. Yeah. A Krishna conscious gift. It could be, there are three pairs of types of exchanges: offering gifts, accepting gifts, revealing your mind in confidence, inquiring confidentially, accepting prasad and offering prasad. So, okay, let's make it easy. You can, if you want, you can give some prasadam. But actually it'd be nice if you gave something. Prasadam's pretty easy, to give, and it's something which we have every day. So I'd like you to give something else, if you can, as a gift to a devotee, any devotee. What about your wife, your husband? No, your wife. Yeah, I mean, you can give it maybe to another devotee. How's that? Is that okay? And you can figure out what you want to give. If you want to give, I don't know, a book or something, you figure it out. I want you to give a gift. And if you are given a gift, I want you to accept it very nicely and express your appreciation. Because, like what we just did, the appreciation exercise, you did it now, and I think, it seemed like it was a nice experience for you. So we want you, we would like you on, say, a weekly basis to do this, to express your appreciation, and we would like you to give a gift every, so often, maybe every month or every so often. Give a gift to another devotee. Let's try to create a culture, a real Vaishnava culture of appreciation, affection, like that, and not just a Haribol. I mean, Haribol's very nice, of course, but not just sort of a casual type of interaction, and not just a how are you type of interaction, but something a little more meaningful. What do you think? Hosaktahe? You understand Hindi? I'm sure you understand more than me. Very Hindi bahut karat hai.
You read better than me.
You like your
Huh?
You like your
Very Hindi. Okay. Now, so we've got, let me just see. Anyone have any question, comment, any point they'd like to raise? Prabhu, loud and clear.
I have two questions.
Start with one.
So you said one of the points, I think it was 3, was that we blame or criticize others based on dissatisfaction of ourselves.
Right.
And you said that to self-analyze, we can improve ourselves.
Yes.
Do you have any practical tips on how to self-analyze?
How to self-analyze. Well, the first tip I'd give, it's sort of like a habit or a practice, shall we say, which has to be cultivated. But a good way to start is to have, if possible, a mentor, an actual mentor or counselor. I think one thing we need to do everywhere, including that's going on in many places is create a counselor system or mentor system, whatever term you like, but it means, it's very straightforward. A more senior devotee is giving advice on a regular basis to a relatively junior devotee, on a regular basis, not just casually, but like they have a meeting in many cases it's every week, maybe it's every 2 weeks. I think it's unusual that there's such a big gap as a month. But devotees, the idea is there that sometimes that devotees are like mirrors, and meaning another devotee can be a good mirror for you, rather than we are a mirror for ourselves. So, what I would say, a good point to start would be, if one has such a devotee already, then and meeting regularly, and they're evaluating, giving relevant guidance and checking on us and all that, to put such a question to them to start off with, because, it can be difficult to really evaluate ourselves accurately, and because we have this tendency, we mentioned last night, to be more charitable with ourselves than with others. This famous idea that we judge ourselves according to our intentions, but we judge others according to their actions. And even if they say, well, I didn't mean to do whatever, but we don't really worry about what they say they meant to do. We worry about what they actually did. So yes, I would say that's a good place to start. Of course, you need such a person. And it can't just be anybody. It has to be a person who is at least somewhat more senior, and who we actually have a connection with, and they do understand us, to a reasonable degree, and we trust them sufficiently. And then we can at least get into a practice. Having said that, we don't want to get too much into it and become sort of, you could say self-obsessed, but at least overly self-conscious rather than Krishna conscious. And that's can be a problem if we're trying to evaluate ourselves. Of course, we do need to try to evaluate ourselves and learn how to do it. So, if you don't have such a person, and even having said that, find another person who can be like a confidential but senior person for us. It doesn't have to be someone who's like geographically local. It can be someone from the other side of the world, as long as they do understand us reasonably, and we can, they're available enough and so on like that. And then we can, with that sort of help, we can cultivate a healthy program of self-evaluation. Am I addressing your question? Yeah, because we don't want to cultivate an unhealthy, like leading to depression, or at least say depressiveness. Yeah, or on the other hand, just being too superficial and thinking that we're too cool, that I'm okay. because frankly, none of us are okay enough that we can say, yeah, I'm okay. So, yeah, so you were based in England for some time, or quite some time. So, maybe it would be effective to connect up with someone there. But I think, in my opinion, we should introduce such a program here. And in my experience, quite a bit of experience over, 20 years of being involved in such programs, I see how it benefits devotees. Usually, as long as the mentor or counselor is sort of capable enough of giving useful insight. How's that? TK? Okay. He has good questions. So who's next? Oh, well, let's okay. Yeah. We'll come back to your second one. Yes, why don't you go ahead?
It's not a question, Maharaj. It is in connection with what Devotee was saying with regard to self-evaluation. So I don't know if this technique that we use in the business world would be actually, we could take it and use it in the spiritual scenario that we have. It's called the SWOT analysis. If there is no mentor or anyone around, so we just take a sheet of paper and then draw. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and
Okay, sure.
probably that could be one of the ways.
It's a possibility.
Yeah. I don't know how we could use it spiritually and.
Well, I don't think it would be difficult. I don't think it would be difficult. Maybe for everybody it might not be so suitable, particularly for people who are really new to Krishna consciousness, because they may not even really understand what they should be evaluating and what improvement means, or what sort of not doing well means, but certainly for practicing devotees. Yeah, I'm familiar with that and been involved in that before, yeah. Thank you. Very good. Thank you for being thoughtful and not being afraid to express yourself. What's point number 2?
So, Raji, one of the points was to become intolerant to others, and finding faults in others, or to put people in their place. So, as a father of 3 young children, often especially as Indians, we're brought up in this culture of what I say, you do. And often, I'll give you an example. One of my sons, he was running around like crazy. I was trying to teach him about the modes. And I was like, this is the mode of passion. Relax. We can do things in mode of goodness. And then I was telling him off after, and then he corrected. But how can he correct me saying, well, now you're in the mode of passion? So how can we learn to put people in their place? Or how can we do this in an effective manner that's not going to cause breakdown of relationships?
Okay. Maybe you should ask something, would you? Sure, yeah. He did it with. That's just a joke to get everyone's attention. But anyway, yes. Well, so just repeat the exact point in a sentence or two.
Without it sounding funny, but how can we put people in their place in a polite manner? Innovation.
Okay. Well, in terms of normal English usage of words, putting a person in their place is not a good way to express what you're talking about, even, if you don't mind me saying, putting in your place a bit. No, the thing is this, first of all, we should really have the mood of being the servant. And even with the children, even with one's own children, one really needs to have the mood of being a servant and not being the boss, which you were saying is kind of the normal state of mind, according to your understanding. Maybe it is. So, yeah, one has to have that sort of attitude, because, attitude is a very important factor in trying to help other people to improve themselves. If the attitude is like, I'm putting you in your place, it means, I'm talking down to you. Your place is down. My place is higher, to whatever degree. And so I'm sort of shooting you down. That's even with children, it mustn't be like that. Like, for example, Prabhupada did not allow the use of violence against children in the schools or in the families, just in general. Didn't allow it. Yes. So, these things need to be done with affection. If they're done in a mood of affection, then in many cases, the person you're trying to not put in their place, but to help to make some, what seems to be important adjustment or improvement, self-improvement, they'll actually feel that, they'll come out of it feeling that really helped me. He really helped me. I'm so glad he spoke to me like that. But if we're in a sort of authoritarian mood, like, Donald Trump. Oh my God. Anyway, let's not get into that, but if we're in some sort of authoritarian type of mood, that it's so easily picked up by the person who we're interacting with. So easily picked up that he's trying to sort of boss me around, sort of thing. And, when people feel you're trying to boss them around, unless you are the boss, and they really need to be, under you, then, well, even if they really need to be under you, if you're actually the boss, but they will resent, they may agree, okay, I'll do it, but they'll resent it, and, resentment builds up, and if you do it often enough, and before you know it, the person will break. Yeah, and either they'll just resign or, like with children, they'll scream at you, verbally abuse you. Yeah. So it has to be done as much as we can in an actual mood of concern. And, it also depends on if you, and it's one thing if it's your children, but in just an ISKCON environment, it also depends on whether you are the right person to make some sort of suggestion or something like that to the person who you feel is at fault. If you are the right or a right enough person, then you can try and do it. But if you're a junior or something like that to them, don't try, unless it's an emergency. Unless there's some extraordinary circumstances where a person has to stop doing something now, because if they don't, maybe they're going to cause a fire or an explosion or something like that. But otherwise, in general interactions and dealings, of course, we also have to be very careful. Is my analysis of this person accurate enough? Or is it tainted by my own attitudes? And like perhaps my own feeling of superiority or something like that. So, in Krishna consciousness, one of the most difficult things, really one of the most difficult things, is to deal with fault, including one's own, but also in dealing with others, dealing with the faults of others. And Prabhupada, sometimes he would sort of blast devotees out of the water, so to speak, but not often. And, for someone who's a spiritual master, for example, and when you're a parent, you're effectively a sort of de facto spiritual master for the children. Right, so you have to consider the ability of the recipient of the input, you should correct this or that, their ability to accept and absorb the instruction and whatever input you want to give. Because if they're not capable, then you have to avoid giving too strong instruction or like too far-reaching type of instruction. It's very subtle, dealing with fault effectively, so that, because success in dealing with another person's fault is that they come out at the end feeling, thank you. I'm so glad that you said what you did. Yes. Because otherwise, if someone is not capable of accepting the instruction, even if it's right, but they're not capable, and you can cause serious disturbance to them, and you will get some reaction for that. Yeah. So it's a very important subject. Is that okay for the time being? You wanted to say something? Loud and clear.
What if you think you are junior to someone, but they think you're the equal or something? You don't meet eye to eye. You think I am junior. They say no, you're my equal or you're my friend, and they treat you like a friend instead of they treat you as being compassionate.
Okay. Did you hear that? Heard that? Listen. What if you feel you're junior to someone, but they feel you're equal to them, right? And you're expecting them to be compassionate to you, but they're sort of, being a bit informal and sort of pally or it's not such a serious problem. I'd say it's sort of like a good problem. Yes. And, you know, to have a mood of a junior, at least with someone who's equal, to have the mood of a junior with someone who is junior to you is not so good, actually. Yeah, in that they won't take you so seriously. But, you know, I would expect that the person would understand where you're coming from.
So then, what if it is you are technically senior, but they are physically, age-wise, they are senior?
Yes, right. Well, that's sensitive, because they also, in one sense, they are actually senior. And you can't just overlook, just because you've been a devotee for, say, 25 years, and this one, who's maybe 20 years older than you, has only been a devotee 5 years, for argument's sake. So you have to respect their seniority in age and sort of tread carefully about, you know, instructing them and trying to, like, obviously take a position of seniority. Because sometimes, you know, they'll pick it up. It may be quite easy, actually, to pick it up. So if, you know, as someone who's actually senior spiritually, with someone who is physically senior, any instructions or guidance like that you may give, because they probably will need some guidance, actually, and you may be the one who's available to give it. But you have to do it in a very sort of gentle and considerate way that can't be taken like you feel you're in, you know, a higher position. Because, you know, older people, being one myself, they're sensitive to their own seniority. Yeah. You know what I want to do? As a last thing, in fact, I mentioned last night, I want to tell you a story, and with some reading involved. It's from a seminar that we do on the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. Really nice seminar, actually. And this is the story of the unknowing offense. And let's just have a look here, right? So I want to read the first couple of verses and then tell you the story, just, you know, tell you the story sort of informally. I won't just read the whole thing. And then, but when we get to the end, I'll read the last, it's like 6 verses. So this is the story of Srila Rupa Goswami and the unknowing offense. So the author says, please always be careful in your dealings with the devotees. Let not ill feelings arise towards you in the devotees' hearts. If the devotees think ill of you, that will be a great impediment to your progress. Now I will tell an anecdote to reveal this truth. And listen to this. So what happened was, Srila Rupa Goswami, when he would chant japa, he would just enter into the pastimes of the Lord and be in the pastimes. In his Manjari form, because he is Rupa Manjari in Goloka Vrindavan. So one day he was doing like that, he was chanting japa. But then his consciousness entered into a pastime of Radha and Krishna. So externally he's still sitting there with his eyes open and maybe actually chanting japa. But he is oblivious to the surroundings, completely unaware of what's going on. So in the pastime, what was happening was that the Sakhis, Radharani's main girlfriends, they were decorating her for meeting Lord Krishna, but they were decorating her secretly, because she didn't want that Krishna would see her until the decoration was complete. So they were, among other things, they were braiding her hair and decorating her hair. And Krishna came along from behind and told all the gopis, don't say anything, just act naturally, like I'm not here. So they did that. And then he took over the decorating and adjusting of her braid, and she was unaware. But now Krishna's touching her hair, and she felt that, this is, I feel like when Krishna touches me. But she didn't think that Krishna was touching her. She thought it's just one of the other girls. So like this went on for a little while. And then all the other decoration, everything was finished. So they got a mirror, and she held the mirror up to look at herself. And who did she see back there but Krishna? And all the girls, all the gopis, manjaris and sakhis, they all laughed. And Radharani laughed. And Rupa Manjari laughed. And sitting in Vrindavan chanting japa, so just looking into space or just looking ahead, but actually not seeing anyone, was Rupa Goswami, smiling and laughing. And one elderly devotee came to visit Rupa Goswami, and he walks up, this elderly devotee, and kind of bent over and, really elderly. So he's sort of struggling along with a walking stick, and he looked up, and there's Rupa Goswami apparently looking straight at him. But actually Rupa Goswami didn't see him, because his consciousness is in the pastime. So this devotee moves towards him, Rupa Goswami still apparently staring at him. Suddenly Rupa Goswami externally laughed. His body laughed in response to the pastime that he was in as Rupa Manjari. You understand the idea? So the elderly devotees, say partially disabled, Rupa Goswami apparently laughs at him like he's a fool, or he's doing something stupid, something like that. And the elderly devotee was hurt, was like deeply hurt. What have I done? Why would Rupa Goswami, of all people, laugh at me like I'm an idiot? So he turned and thinking, why did this happen? He went to find Sanatana Goswami to ask him. So at that time, when the elderly devotee just moved away and out of sight, Rupa Goswami suddenly came to external consciousness, suddenly. One moment he's in the pastime, next moment he's just out of the pastime. Because usually there would be like a transition, but now it's just like he's in and up, he's out, what happened? And he wondered what happened. So then he chanted again, trying to enter into the pastime, but he couldn't. And he thought, something has happened, but I don't know what happened. Maybe I committed an offense, which was the case that unknowingly he did something which caused the elderly devotee to feel hurt and upset, or in other words, to sort of feel offended. So Rupa Goswami is wondering, what happened? Maybe I offended someone, but I just don't know what happened. So then he thought, yes, I know. I must go and ask Sanatana Goswami. Because Sanatana Goswami is the senior, and he was advising all the other of the 6 Goswamis. So he walked over there. Sanatana Goswami was staying not far away. So he found Sanatana Goswami. The elderly Vaishnava got there first, and then Rupa Goswami got there just very shortly after. And let me just read what happens. What happened? So the elderly Vaishnava said to Sanatana, I went to see Sri Rupa, but when he saw me, he suddenly burst into laughter. My heart filled with sorrow. I did not say anything. I do not know why he acted in that way. I've come to ask you of it. So Sanatana Goswami understood that Rupa was in a pastime with Radha and Krishna, and he laughed for that reason, because he'd never laugh at a devotee like you're a fool, that sort of thing. So Sanatana Goswami explained the true reason for Sri Rupa's laughter. Hearing it, the elderly Vaishnava became repentant at heart. That the elderly Vaishnava said, why did I approach him at that moment? Why did I approach him at that moment? Not understanding his heart, I committed an offense. So the elderly Vaishnava became disturbed. But Sanatana Goswami pacified him. That was one of his expertises. So that then Rupa Goswami came. And Rupa does not yet know what happened, but the elderly Vaishnava does. So seeing Sri Rupa coming, the elderly Vaishnava approached him. Falling on the ground, that Vaishnava offered his respects. To Sri Rupa he very humbly said, I committed an offense. O great soul, please forgive me. I did not understand how you were rapt in meditation when I came. So please, kindly forgive my offense. If you are merciful to me, then my heart can become peaceful. This I say to you. So hearing these words, Sri Rupa became very agitated at heart. Falling to the ground, he offered respectful obeisances. Folding his hands, he said, I have no power to say how great was the offense I committed to you. Please kindly kindly forgive my offense. Both devotees were very humble. Both were filled with the nectar of pure devotion. They both forgave each other. Then they both became peaceful. They both approached Srila Sanatana Goswami. For many moments they were all plunged in the nectar of talking about Lord Krishna. And here comes, this is very important what's coming now. Everyone heard of this incident with Srila Rupa Goswami. Hearing of it, everyone became filled with wonder. O devotees, please be very careful in dealing with the Vaishnavas. Give them even your very breath, so they will forgive your offense. Be careful. Do not see a Vaishnava's faults. Always praise the Vaishnavas. The ancient great devotees say, no one understands the ways of a Vaishnava. Through his dear devotees, Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya has taught this truth to us. Hold the devotees' lotus feet to your head and always dive in the nectar of pure devotional service. So, in devotee relationships, it's very important, it's more than very important, it's vital to avoid offenses. Because if we commit offenses, we will get reactions. Particularly, if we have been around for some time, we're initiated. Even if you're not initiated, but particularly if you're initiated, even more particularly if you're second initiated, you have to really be careful to avoid offenses. And if somehow, the point here is that the offense was unknowing. There was no offense actually. But the problem was the devotee felt offended. And even Rupa Goswami didn't even know that it had happened, and the devotee felt offended by him. So, particularly in all cases, but maybe more particularly in family situations, there's this familiarity gets in, you just sort of become used to each other. Oh, I know him, I know her, he's like this, and she's like that. And before you know, the relationship has descended, if not completely to the material platform, but, in that direction quite solidly. So, this is why, Vishwanath Prabhu is going to today express appreciation to his wife.
He says he does every day.
Okay. He's going to do it like extra super duper today.
She's going to be your biggest fan.
Yes, okay. So he says, oh dear devotees. Well, he actually literally says, oh my brothers. But we can also include, oh my sisters. Please be very careful in dealing with the Vaishnavas. Give them even your very breath, so they will forgive your offense. Be careful. Do not see a Vaishnava's faults. Always praise the Vaishnavas. And through his dear devotees, Lord Chaitanya has taught this truth to us. So we have to hold the devotees' feet to our heads, right? Bow down, offer your obeisance.
It should be reciprocated also.
See, it takes two. Yeah, no, but that's not quite the right point. The point is, you are responsible for you, for what you do. So if you offer your obeisances, don't think that she is now obliged. Right? If she does, Hari Bol. If she doesn't, Hare Krishna.
Why don't you choose only Vishnu? Why not all the husbands?
I'm just picking on him. Well, yes, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. And maybe I should check tomorrow which husband, I'll check with the wives. Did your husband bow down? If not that, at least, humbly express appreciation.
The 4 moons. The dandas we showed yesterday.
Yeah, okay. Is your wife here, Jay?